Hi, Mia. Thank you for joining.
Hi, how are you?
Can you hear us? Okay. So I will start the session. We have about, let's see, about 13 students, I think, altogether. We were supposed to have about 26, so they may, pop on and pop off as the session goes on. But because we have a lot of questions, I'm sure they want answered. I'm going to start by having both yourself, I'll start with you first. You can give a little bit of your background and your role to the students and how you engage with students at your site. And Mia, once you're finished, Steve, I'll have you jump in, and then I'll go to answering the specific or asking the specific questions that the students sent in to Student Affairs ahead of time. Okay, I'll also be monitoring the chat room. So students, if you have any additional questions, I'll be looking at the chat. I can ask them on your behalf. And having said that, I'll turn you over to Mia Weiss, who is the manager of the BD HEOR Center of Excellence at Becton Dickinson. She actually oversees our students, both in APPEs and for our HEOR fellowship we have at BD. And she is also has her master's in public health. So Mia, I'll let you give your overview.
Sure. Thank you, Dean Rossi. So hi, everyone. I'm Mia Weiss. I'm a senior manager on the HEOR Corporate Center of Excellence. And I've been at BD just over 3 years now. And I think throughout that entire time, been collaborating with FDU. And I now help with rotational with the APPE students, as well as managing the BD FDU HEOR fellowship, which I think we're in the third year of.
Yes.
Yes. Third year of, and overall it's been a great experience so far. So I work very, very closely with students throughout the interviewing process, as well as being the preceptor as well as manager while students are at BD. A little bit just about my professional background. So I started off my career from undergrad in life science management consulting, and spent 2 years there really learning a lot about the pharma and biotech industry, doing a lot of different kinds of strategy work. And from there, I did my MPH in epidemiology and biostatistics. I was
Mia, I'm sorry, I think you froze. I don't know if you can hear me, but you froze.
The US HEOR team. And from there, I've been at BD. Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Mia, we just lost you for a couple of seconds before.
Okay.
So you're okay now.
Okay, perfect. So I finished. I hope everyone was able to hear. I'll pass it over.
Okay, so Stephen, I think Mia, we're passing on to Stephen now, yes?
Excellent.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Hello, Mia. Good to be working with you again, and thank you, Dean Rossi. Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Payne, and I work at Bayer Medical Communications. I'm a pharmacist, a 1991 graduate of University of Connecticut with a BS in pharmacy, and then a 2005 graduate of Southern Connecticut State University with MBA. I've been with Bayer for 17 years total. Also some experience as a healthcare care consultant, and some experience pretty much in any pharmacy that might be out there as a chain or even an independent. So I've been a preceptor pretty much the last 7 years. I do ABs for FDU and also Rutgers. We have a fellowship program, and I'll do a lot of the interviewing with that, but I don't typically have fellows myself. At times I have when I have launches for my products, a couple times. But mostly I don't have as much experience with the working directly with the fellows, although they're on our team. We have 3 of them on our team right now. So that's me, and I'm looking forward to answering questions. I'm really happy to be here tonight, and hope I can help you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen and Mia. So to kind of keep things going and a little bit more fluid, I'm going to try to group like several questions together rather than ask you, individually. So basically, most of the students, I believe, are on this Zoom session to get some tips from both of you on how they can land or secure a fellowship. So basically, the questions I'm going to ask are, what is required from a student to help them to get a fellowship position? What do you look for in a student that helps them stand out to land a position like this? And again, what do you specifically look for in a fellowship candidate? If you could emphasize a little bit on soft skills, how to conduct an interview, proper maybe eye contact, because a lot of interviews right now are being done via this meeting via Zoom. So those are the first three questions. I'll kind of couple them together. So Mia, do you want to take those three first? You're on mute. Mia, unmute. Okay.
So overall, what I would say I'm looking for in a candidate is, so when we look at when we look for fellowship candidates, we know that most PharmDs coming in may or may not have extensive relevant work experience, but what the advantage and what we're looking for is it's really a learning opportunity and a hands-on-the-job training. So we're looking for candidates that come in with both soft skills and the hard skills coming from your pharmacy degree, such as ability to read and interpret scientific literature, critical thinking skills, etc. And so those are some of the initiatives. That's kind of the baseline of my objective. But overall, some of the specifics are definitely want to see candidates who are number one, fast learners, can show that they can work independently, but also as part of a team, and really strong critical thinking skills. I would say that's a really top thing. And in terms of soft skills, I would say in any corporate work environment, the number one thing is probably communication skills. So I would say both verbal and written. So for instance, when you think about that, the first way that we see you is through your application. So your resume, your cover letter, etc. So just make sure that you put a lot of effort into that to make sure that that's a great first impression, that it's well written, that there's no mistakes or errors in that. And then be able in an interview to really be able to communicate why you're interested in whatever position you're going for. So essentially, I want to see candidates that are not reading me their resume or kind of listing their experience, but talking to me about what value those experiences bring to the table. Because what that shows me is that the candidate understands what experiences they had and can glean key learnings from those that they can bring to the BD team, or obviously any team as well.
Okay, thank you, Mia. Steve?
No, I mean, that pretty much hit on just about everything. That was a really great answer. And that's exactly what I would say too. That's exactly what I want to see. I want to see in an interview somebody who can really talk to their experience. Because if they can talk to their experience, they really know it. They really lived it. They really put the effort into learning it. And Mia also just mentioned fast learner. We all really give a lot of high points to our candidates. Maybe they were students with us before, maybe they're not, and we're interviewing now and they appear to be fast learners. We want someone to be able to learn the job. We want somebody to approach it like it is a learning opportunity, approach it with passion. And yes, if you bring good skills over from FDU, from your pharmacy education, and you could do some of the clinical evaluation and things like that. That is also so helpful. And we're also looking for great people skills. You have to be able to work independently. You have to be productive. You have to be able to do things on time. And I particularly love it when I see somebody always go above and beyond in the work that they do and always try to do the best quality of work. And I just want to touch on the other thing. I think the soft skills are, that Barbara mentioned, the competencies are really good. So we want to be able to see that in you in an interview. We want to see the personality. We want to see the connection you make with us by being sharp, being prepared, and by making eye contact with us, and just coming in and doing a good job with that as well.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So I'm looking at two different questions here, and I'm trying to think of how I can group them together. So one has, are there opportunities for pharmacists in various divisions within Bayer? So Steve, I'll ask this of you first. So for instance, you have regulatory, medical affairs, drug information, maybe medical sales liaisons. So if you have those opportunities or several opportunities for fellowships within your organization, do you suggest students apply to different types of fellowships within the same company? Is that frowned upon? Is that something that's encouraged? Or can you speak a little bit about that? So Steve, I'll have you answer that first, and then Mia, I'll have you second.
Sure. There's a lot of great opportunities for pharmacists in industry, and Dean Rossi just mentioned so well the number of opportunities, and that's why if you do a rotation with me and also with the preceptors we have at Bayer, we try to connect you with as many other departments so you can learn what they do is too. I'm medical communications, which is more of the medical review, medical information. We try to connect you to regulatory, and we try to connect you to the medical science liaisons and in other roles, HEOR type roles, which we call DGOS at Bayer. And basically, so you can really see the different roles and try to determine what you'd like to do and what really fits you. So first of all, we try to do that. In terms of fellowships, if you're interviewing for fellowships, and I'm going to say what I said last year too, we expect that you're going to really be pursuing a lot of opportunities because you want to win an opportunity to get into industry. We can't expect you to have all your eggs in one basket. It is a little bit different when you're applying for two within the same company, because everybody wants you to believe that you're most interested in their opportunity. So it's kind of hard when you're doing two. But I think if you're doing that, you should just be honest if asked, and just say that you're really interested in both, and you hope you get an opportunity in one of them, and that you speak then about how much you'd like to come to the company, how you love the culture, and you be able to speak about how you would love to do both roles is what I would say.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Mia?
Okay. Well, I have a slightly different answer for that. I think this is probably just because, number one, just want to say, anyone who does a rotation, 100% agree that the idea of doing the rotation is to really be a learning experience. So definitely, I think Anna's on the call, who's currently with us. We want to connect everyone to whatever opportunities there are, whether it be HEOR, medical, whatever, there's tons of different opportunities and experiences. But I would say, since the HEOR fellowship is somewhat specific, when I'm looking for candidates, I want to see candidates that are specifically interested in HEOR and that can voice why they're specifically interested in HEOR. So I have to admit that if I see that a candidate is applying to a wide variety, it might indicate that maybe the candidate isn't quite sure that they're interested in HEOR versus HEOR in a lot of different companies. So I'm going to just say that from that perspective, but with a caveat of definitely understand that you may be interested in more than one interest, but I think we really want to see that you're specifically interested in health economics.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, so the next group of questions, I'm going to try to put them together so that you can answer them again like you've been answering them collectively. So we want to be positive here and hope that, let's see, I have 40 of our students on the Zoom. I hope all of you secure the fellowship of your dreams. Okay, so I'm going to be positive in that regard. However, a lot of our students here on this call or on this meeting want to secure a position within the pharma industry. So I guess my question to both of you is that in the event they aren't successful in securing a fellowship, what are the other suggested ways to enter the pharma industry if you have the Form D? And if you have the Form D, some of our students may also have that coupled with a dual degree, because we have the dual master's opportunity at the school. So is that a little bit of an advantage in getting into pharma if you don't have the fellowship? So I'll leave that open-ended and have Steve, I guess I'll have you answer that first.
Yeah, of course, the fellowship is a great way to get in, and probably the pathway nowadays, the fundamental pathways nowadays. I actually started off as a contractor, and here I am many years later, and I did very well as a contractor. Being a contractor is a little more difficult though, because there may or may not be a job at the end of your contract expiration. But when you get that contract or position and you develop the experience, it certainly will help you apply in other places for a very similar role in industry. So that would be one possibility. Sometimes also you can get in by working, especially in marketing, for example, you can get in by working for an agency. We actually have a contractor with us now, and I know he's very well liked. We have two contractors with us now, and I know they're both very well liked. But one of them that I'm thinking of came from an agency and actually worked on neurological drugs for migraines. And in that job, which was more of a consulting job for marketing, he did develop a lot of expertise about the compound. So that would be another way. And the other way is just to get an entry level position. Those are tougher to find. You might have to search a lot of postings, do a lot of networking, but those are the ways that I would think.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Mia?
Yeah, so just to echo exactly what Steve was saying, I think a lot of the entry-level positions want you to have some work experience or a fellowship before coming in, but definitely contract positions are available. I would definitely say that I think consulting agency jobs are really another great way as well. I know for us, we really with consulting experience. I know, for instance, like my manager, actually, he was a consultant who his company worked for BD, and he actually came to BD from that company after having a lot of experience. Barbara, that's Eric. So I think that's something that happens very frequently. So that's another great way as well. I know that's something, like, I have consulting experience, and I know a lot of people on at the company I work for ended up switching, then working for the clients in the end.
Okay, thank you both. So let's say a student secures a fellowship, and once the fellowship is completed, whether it be PGY1 or PGY2, they're offered employment in that company. How easy is it to transition to another area within the same pharma company once you've completed a fellowship and you've kind of had a couple of years under your belt in a particular area? And because both of your companies are very, very large, they're worldwide companies, how easy is it once you've gotten your foot in the door to transition? So Steve, I'll let you answer that first.
Sure, and it would be okay if Mia has a different answer here, because maybe we think differently too, just the way we handle it. So in medical communications, there may not be an opening at the end of your fellowship because we have a group that basically doesn't expand as far as and as fast as other groups do. We have hired fellows into the position, and one of them is actually done very, very well. And the other is actually with our global. So it would depend if there was an opening. So we actually try very hard to help our candidates land something within our company. And often in our company, it's a medical science liaison job. It could also be regulatory. So what we'll do is, don't hold me exactly to this, but because like I said, my experience is more with the students, but I remember that fellows, and any of you can ask our current fellows, but they do 4 rotations. I think they do 3 within our group, and then we give them 1 that they can do anywhere they want. So they can work with clinical pharmacology, they can work with regulatory strategy, they can work with regulatory promotions, they can work with an MSL. So we really try to help them in that regard, find that place that's for them and let them explore. But they also do 18 months dedicated to our group. And in that time, they do actually 3 different areas. So they'll do women's health, oncology, and cardiovascular, where our big products are. So you have that going for you. You work a few different therapeutic areas. That's what we do. And we encourage it because of that setup.
Thank you, Steve. Mia?
Yeah, so I think we view the goal of our fellowship, obviously, to get a full-time offer with our team or within the global HEOR organization. But I would say after that, it's very easy to make lateral movements within the company. Some examples I could say from recent fellows are going to marketing, one became an MSL, and one transitioned to market access. So there's a lot of different, I would say, lateral moves that happen from HEOR within BD.
Thank you, Mia. I know a lot of the students on the Zoom this evening are going to say, oh, here they go again. But we always try to emphasize to students the importance of networking, whether it be with their peers, their teachers, some of the pharmacy organizations they may belong to. So I just want them to hear from you folks, because you're in, corporate America, you're in pharma, and there are so many different opportunities students can have. How could you give them some tips on how do you find networking of value in your positions or working within your companies? Okay, so Steve, I'll ask you first.
Oh, sure. And definitely networking is everything. You can't advocate that enough. And we didn't really have as much networking when I was in college. We didn't have those type of connections. And we didn't have, of course, the digital platforms to connect and stay in touch. And I kind of regret in the beginning of my career was mostly about productivity and self-achievement, that there wasn't as much networking that at least I took part in, but I'm certainly doing it now. And for me, it's the role that I play, being in touch with so many different people and roles and functions and other departments within the company. I can really, really, really network and get to know everyone very well and spend some time with them. For you have this whole you have all the other fellows and all the other students. I mean, the networking potential that you guys have and the ability to share information and opportunities is just wonderful. And I'm glad to see a lot of students getting out nowadays and graduating really partake in it. But I think it is everything. It certainly helps you advance within your company. It helps you become more diverse and learn a lot and work very well with people. And it's also great for finding out other opportunities at other companies, because people leave and go other places. And sometimes they come to you and say, hey, I got something that's perfect for you. Why don't you come listen to our new opportunity that we're interviewing for. So that's what I would think.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Mia?
Yeah, I would strongly agree with everything Steve said, particularly about ability to learn about different job opportunities and other types of opportunities. 2 points I'll add. As you're doing any of your rotations while still in school, I would say definitely take the opportunity to meet anyone who you're able to meet and talk to, because regardless of your path, whether you think their experience may or may not be relevant, you kind of never really know when you might cross paths. And one thing I would say at BD is because there's so many different lateral moves going on within the company, from business unit to business unit, function to function, I would say even just some of these more outside of work networking opportunities, I find to be super helpful because I think, Steve, as you mentioned, some of the people skills is really how a lot of our work gets done, and being able to navigate some of those situations. And so I often find that someone I might have met in a training, I end up on a project with, and it makes it a lot easier to reach out to someone who you've met face to face, and just really helps facilitate that productivity. So I would say focusing entirely on 100% the work entirely may not actually help you in the long run, but kind of balancing that with those building those people skills, building those relationships will really probably get you further.
Thank you, Mia. So one of these questions, I think, that was submitted by the students to Justin in Student Affairs, I think they're trying to think of potential questions that they may get on a fellowship interview. So I don't want to put both of you on the spot, but this may very well be a question that they would get. But they're looking to have each of you describe your corporate culture in like as minimal number of words as possible. So I don't know if somebody got this as a potential fellowship question that could pop up, but if you could describe your corporate culture in as minimal number of words as possible, could you be able to do that? Steve, I see you thinking.
Yes,
I don't know.
definitely.
So
Definitely. I definitely, I love Bayer. I think it's got a great culture. And what I would say, if I had to give a really short answer, is people are really engaged. People really want to come to work at Bayer, and we're like family. And it's just a fun place to work. We're all very, very hardworking, and we're very high achievers. But you wouldn't necessarily maybe even get that right away from meeting with us, because we work so well together, and we just use everybody's resources so well, and the diversity that we have within the teams to accomplish things. And it's a fun place to be. People want to work there, and that's one of the reasons I think we always do so well as a company.
thank you, Steve. Mia, what would you say about BD?
So I'd say probably the overarching driver of us is like improving health. And I would say that has really been a key feature in our culture over the past year and a half of the pandemic. Because I think a lot of us felt just very motivated because of how close a lot of our products have had to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would say overall, I would say very collaborative and also very friendly, I think is a good way to put it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so now I think most of the students would want to know, are you, Stephen, directly involved in interviewing for fellowships within different areas, or once there is a fellow on the premises in your area, you engage with the fellows, correct?
Yes, I am directly involved in the interviewing.
Okay, and Mia, I know you also from the HEOR fellowship that you're involved with that as well. So I think what some of the students would really find helpful as a takeaway from this conversation is, could each of you kind of, I guess, throw out a particular question or two that you would find is your go-to question when you interview a fellow? So if you have a specific fellowship question that is your favorite, or one that helps you differentiate, is this a particular student that, I'm really looking, to go to another level with, to ask additional questions. So Mia, I'll go to you first. So if you have some, go-to questions that the students can say, well, let me prepare in how to respond or answer these types of questions.
So I'd say the question that I ask every single person I interview, regardless of what interviewing for, is always like, I will give my background, and I ask the fellow to give me a little bit of their background and why they're interested in the role outside of their resume. And kind of as I alluded to before, what I'm looking to in that answer is whoever's interviewing to be able to give a succinct explanation of why they're here and what they bring to the table and why they're interested. And I think what I don't want to see in that is, I don't want to see anyone listing their resume, but I want to see you be able to elaborate for what your experience is. And also I really want to understand why you're interested in the opportunity that you're interviewing for.
Okay, thank you, Mia. That's a very, very good, helpful question. Steve?
That's exactly it. So yes, we always say, tell us about yourself. Why are you here? Why are you interested? What are you going to get out of this fellowship? What are you going to bring to it? What do you want to learn, and what do you want to achieve within this? And as Mia said so well, we don't want to hear you list your resume. Your experience is, of course, very important, but we really want to hear you connect with us and engage us and really understand that you have the skills it takes and the competencies it takes and the interest it takes to come in and to really learn and do well. And of course, the experience and knowledge of industry would help, but that's not primarily what we're looking for. We want you to be able to engage and tell us what about you is going to make you successful and make you the fellowship candidate that we're most interested in.
Thanks, Stephen. So based on the questions that you just said that you would look to ask and get a response to, is there anything particular you look for in a student's cover letter that kind of, pops for you to say, well, gee, I really would like to pursue this student a little bit further? So are there any tips you could give to the group as to what are good things to include in a cover letter, or how to make their passion come across, that this is something that they really want to pursue? So Mia, I'll go to you first.
I think I'll probably give a similar answer of, I don't want the cover letter to just list what your resume is, but I want it to actually really add color, or being able to actually explain why your experiences matter for the role that you're applying for and why you're interested in it. Because it's possible, I think, for instance, that maybe you didn't get to do a rotation in the specific fellowship that you are interviewing for, but let's say in the rotation you got the opportunity to speak to someone and you got super interested in it and you've been doing a lot of research. So I want to hear that and you explaining why you're passionate about whatever you're interviewing for specifically, and basically be able to show an understanding too of the skills required and what you're interviewing for. So, because I can tell sometimes, like for instance, in a cover letter, if it seems like it was maybe written for something else, we usually, I would say, can tell. And I'd say one other thing is, again, I think I stated this before, make sure that the grammar and the writing is succinct. So as I said, like for me, communication skills are very important. And so like your cover letter is something that I'm sure FDU has this opportunity, but I would strongly recommend like you have like career services or something, or someone similar review it to get feedback on. I know when I was an undergrad at Penn, that was like a huge thing for when we did recruiting. Like everyone kind of showed you put a lot of effort into the cover letter, and it shows when you're able to clearly communicate that.
Great advice, Mia. Thank you. Steve, anything else you can add?
Yeah, that's some more top-notch advice right there, and that's exactly it. We want it to be well written, and yeah, you can't have any mistakes or any bad sentences or any grammar. So get professional services to really help you with it. Put your time into it, and like Mia said, what's really going to connect is when you're writing it for that position. Like you really understand the position, you really have a lot of desire, interest. You're an individual who's going to grow from it, and just really try to bring that out. Of course, your experiences too, but your experiences we know are going to be limited. So make sure you don't overstate what they are and just say because you had these experiences, that's going to make you a great candidate. We want to see more from you about what are your special attributes. And it really helps if you understand what we're looking for and also the type of things that would win us over, because we want somebody who's going to come in and be a success. So you try to bring that out as much as you can in a cover letter. And yes, I do think that the more professional assistance you get with it, and also just don't take a template, like Mia was saying, and rewrite it, because it's not going to connect or engage us as well. Add color to it, like she said.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so I know in some of the fellowship interviews that we do with the school, we always give the students an opportunity at the end of us asking them questions for them to have an opportunity to ask us questions for further clarity or just general questions. Are there any specific questions that are very well received by the fellowship committee in your respective companies when a student asks a question of the interviewer that makes you say, wow, they really have, knowledge, or they really, understand this whole process? Or is there anything you can elaborate a little bit about that when they get that opportunity at the end of the interview to ask a question? Mia?
Sure. So I'll say, number one, if you're given the opportunity to ask a question, you should always ask a question. Never say that you don't have any questions. I'll say just in general, in the work environment, asking questions is a sign of showing that you understand. So usually that's how I'm able to assess fellows or rotational students if they actually do understand the material. And so I'll say in terms of specific questions, obviously there may be some basic logistical questions that you might have, which are of course fine, but I would say questions that show your understanding of the position, of the industry, things like that are helpful. So for instance, BD is obviously a medical device company. We're not a pharma or a biotech company. So for instance, asking questions about potentially the difference between that and just trying to understand, that is really what I'm looking to see, like comprehension. And so that's kind of the things that are like standout questions, but it's of course, like you might have basic questions just about like the process, like the day-to-day, like there's some of those basic questions which are always good, but the number one thing is don't say you don't have questions.
Great answer, Mia. So Steve, anything to add?
That is what I would say as well. We really want to see the questions at the end to show that it's another way of expressing your interest and understanding. So ask like some good questions about the role to show that to further show us you understand it and that you'll do well and that you're very, very interested in it. And also if you can ask questions about the company, or maybe in my day-to-day activities, what I do, why I like my job so much, anything that can get us to give you an answer that will tell you more about the position, because we're getting a sense that you're really interested and really qualified for it. I think those are way better than logistical questions. Like Mia said, of course, you can ask those if you really have one. I think we'd be better maybe to ask those, outside. And for us, you could ask our fellows who conduct that part of the interview that. But I really want to see that you want to learn more, know more, and be hungry, and that you ask a question that really shows that you would be great for the role because you really understand and have a passion for what the role is.
Thanks, Steve. I know Mia, you had mentioned earlier, we are going to have some sessions over the next week or two for students to have an opportunity to sit down with some faculty on, CV, cover letter preparation, and some tips on interviewing. So we do offer that, and hope, some of the students who are here are going to take advantage of that. But are there any other tips post the interview? So they've had the interview, they found out all the particulars, and now they've left the Zoom session. Are there any tips on what the student should do post the interview that would help them stand out even after the interview process? Mia?
So it's interesting because when I interviewed, we were told to do this for every single interview, but I don't see all candidates doing this now, is write a thank you letter follow up. Whoever, usually, at least from BD, you'll get an interview schedule which has everyone's email address.
Mm-hmm.
If not, you can definitely ask whoever helped coordinate for people's email addresses. If it was an in-person interview, you would get their business card or their actual email. But I would say you should definitely follow up within like 24 hours or so and just send thank you for it, and maybe just add a quick note. You enjoyed talking about XYZ to show that you remember the quick conversation. And I would say that's definitely something to do. One thing to note, don't necessarily expect a response from whoever the interviewer is. That doesn't indicate in any sort of way whether the interview went well or not. If the interview went amazing, the interviewer will probably respond, but otherwise they probably won't. but we do know whether you sent a thank you or not.
Good tip, Mia. Steve, anything else to add?
Yeah, you really can't stand out after the interview. So I wouldn't go to great length to try to stand out afterwards. But it's amazing how many people, like Mia said, don't write the thank you note and don't write it to everybody they interview with. So make sure you send everybody as soon as possible a thank you note. Let them know you really enjoyed meeting them, you really enjoyed the interview, and that you learned a lot and that you were excited about it. But don't try to use that thank you letter to tell people too much about yourself or anything more. You've already done it in the interview, but definitely let them know you really enjoyed meeting them, learning about the company, and that you're excited about the position. And do it. Make sure you do it, like Mia said. It's amazing. We see candidates that don't, and I don't understand that because it's such a simple thing to do.
Mia, you were going to add something?
Yeah, one more thing just to add is throughout the interview process, whoever you're interacting with, just make sure your written communication is always very professional.
Yeah.
So whether or not, like, for instance, I know at BD, we're extremely friendly, but in terms of like written communication, we always want to be professional in that level. Obviously it may be different when you're on the job, et cetera. We may have more casual communication, but I would say definitely, like, any communication you have with whoever's doing recruiting or the hiring manager, always you want to be extremely professional, no typos, no spelling errors, because I notice those things. I'm sure, Steve, you do as well.
Yes. And professional in the sense that you may have had a nice friendly interview with us, but don't write one that, keep it very professional, even if you know us. I tell our students that when they come in to interview with us, keep the interview very professional, even though you worked with us for 10 weeks and you've kind of become friends. You don't write anything that you would write like to a friend. Keep it very professional. And of course, no mistakes and anything like that.
Very, very good points. So, okay, so we've been chatting almost, about 40 minutes now. So there's one question, I don't know who submitted this, but for both of you, the students are asking, how fulfilling do you find your current positions in the industry career path that you're engaged with right now? So I guess they want to hear a little bit about you in your jobs and your fulfillment professionally. So I guess, Steve, I'll go to you first, and maybe you can tell them a little bit about your path and what you do right now, and if it's fulfilling, professionally working at Bayer.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. I love my job and I love what I do on a day-to-day. In medical communications, there's always something interesting going on. Besides the work in PRT, which is always interested in the work with answering customers, it's just a role that I get to do so much and be involved with so many people. And there's always something new and something challenging to work on. So it's never boring. Now, if you're a medical science liaison, you might like more being out with the customers and calling on the key opinion leaders. But I like myself the internal work, although I would like both. And I really enjoy coming to work every day at Bayer. I like it. I love my colleagues. I love my boss. And I just love all our philosophies. And myself, I might be one of the few people in my group. I'm not looking for anything else. And I'm very happy, and I would stay in this role for a lifetime if I can. That's how much I like what I'm doing. But many of my colleagues are looking for opportunity, are looking for more senior positions where they can be more of a leader. And they definitely, at Bayer, we have those opportunities, and they really encourage people to try to develop those skills over time. But that's how I feel. I hope that was help to folks.
Okay. No, but Steve, I think, that's a very insightful comment that you made, that you're very content and fulfilled at what you're currently doing. A lot of people, sometimes even though they may not want to make a change, they feel that they have to. And it's very refreshing to hear that from somebody, to say, I'm happy in what I'm doing and I'm really not looking for anything else because I'm fulfilled with what I'm doing now. So that's a very different perspective on your role and what you're doing. And I think it's good for the students to hear that.
Yeah, I think you might want to get to a certain level first. Of course, I did. I'm at the director level, and everything's good there. The packages that I get and the opportunities and the benefits I got is very good there. So that sometimes drives some of it in the beginning. Of course, you have to get advancing roles because I at least also have security that with my experience, if there was some reason, that I needed to find new employment, I could. So I think at the beginning you do want to move up.
Right.
Yeah, so there will be some of that for students.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Mia?
Yeah, and I think because I'm earlier on in my career, I would say I probably am exactly kind of, Steve, what you were talking about is I've definitely, at BD, I've stayed on the same team, but my role has very much evolved and changed over time. So for instance, when I first started, I was more of an individual contributor. And then I took on part managing responsibilities. And now I'm really more in a strategic role. So where I do a lot of project management strategy. And then also more recently, I would say also on our team, because we're like the center of excellence in a way, we're sort of like an internal consultancy where we provide support and strategic guidance to all the different business units as needs arise. But I actually, over the past 6 months, have also had the opportunity, since there was a vacancy, to also kind of step in to kind of wear two hats. So I've been sitting on my current role, but also leading a business unit as well in the HEOR role. So that's been a unique opportunity. So I would say there's never really a dull moment, I'll say. So I think like definitely, at least I personally felt that I've had a lot of different opportunities to grow in different ways. But again, there's also a lot of different opportunities within BD, even within the function, to move to different areas. And you definitely see, for instance, people moving around from the central team to a business, from one business to another business, and lots of different opportunities that way.
Okay, so this kind of, based on what you both just said, this kind of brings me to another question, in that since you engage with pharmacists, not only in your individual areas, but maybe, at another platform, on another team, et cetera, could you give us a little bit of insight on what you think future trends are for employment opportunities for pharmacists in pharma with fellowships? Steve?
I'll tell you, and Mia might be able to attest to this, our HEOR, which we call DGOS, they're really growing. I cannot believe how many people are hired into that organization and how many senior positions they create and how much that industry has really expanded. And I think that's because there is such a demand out there for pharmacoeconomic evidence. And the way these networks, these health systems are really growing, it has become a major, major thing. I think regulatory with ad promo, it's always very busy. That's at the core of what we do. And they need people that will review the promotional materials and make sure they meet regulatory requirements. And that's always growing. And medical science liaisons, I'm not really so sure that it's growing. I mean, everybody wants to have the scientific support. I know there's a lot of access issues out there. But I definitely think regulatory strategy is also growing very well. Medical information, medical communications, what I do, it's always been about the same. There's limited positions. As you get new products, you'll hire on, maybe you'll expand that way. But the opportunities really do seem to be in DGOS, HEOR, pharmacoeconomics. Market access is something Mia mentioned before. That is really, really growing. We get a lot of PharmDs in there. And of course, if you go on the business side, there's always marketing. Make sure you like marketing though, because it really is a 24/7 job. But some people love it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Mia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just to echo, I would say HEOR is like really growing, as you've probably seen. I think just as as we have like increasing in costs, there's an increasing need to show the value of our products. And so being that, definitely HEOR comes to the forefront. There's also added utilization of real world evidence now. So for instance, real world evidence can now be used as part of submissions for approvals. So again, there's a lot of opportunity there. But I also think one of the reasons too is that HEOR is really a pretty nascent function. So it's definitely been growing. And I think the pandemic is only highlighting that even more because again, you see all these institutions having cost pressures and more limited resources. So for instance, essentially what we're helping do is helping them understand with your limited resources, how can you drive the most value?
Very nice overview, Mia. So within the last couple of minutes, I guess the very final question would be a general overview on how best can students prepare for a fellowship interview? Is it, just triple proofreading their cover letter to make sure it's succinct and on point, like you said earlier? Is it maybe getting together with a couple of their peers and drafting a couple of questions and then role playing back and forth to see how they come across, their body language, their eye contact, that kind of thing? So I guess I'll just, leave that open-ended question to each of you, and we could kind of finish out the clock with your responses on that. So what are your tips on how best all of these students who have stayed on this Zoom, I'm very impressed, how can they best prepare for a fellowship interview? So Steve, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Mia.
Sure, kind of like we were saying before, we want your cover letters and your CV to be immaculate. We're looking for something professional, well done, and you can never not put too much time into it. You want to put as much time into it. And I tell my students, send it to me, send it to everyone, get their advice, continuously work on it. Always try to make it better and better and better, but also make sure that what's on there you can really talk to, kind of like Mia and I were saying before. I think the role playing does really help. I try to get my students, when they're with me, to try to talk to as many people, do as many one-on-ones. And I tell them, when you're doing your one-on-ones, really try to get to know the person and try to listen to them and really try to think as you might be interviewing with this person someday. So definitely as much experience that you can get role playing and kind of preparing. Just don't stop preparing for the interview. Everything that you can do, you really, really, really want to give it your all. And when you're in the interview, listen to people. Try to understand what they're asking for you. Try to think. You got to be able to think on your feet and try to understand, well, what is Mia looking for? What's Steve looking for? Why are they asking me that question? And how am I going to relate to it? That would be my advice. But keep working, keep preparing nonstop, and go all out.
Thank you, Steve. Mia?
So definitely echo everything Steve said. But just to add in, I also want to see that you've done some research about the company and the role. Again, we're a medical device company. I don't expect you to come in knowing all of our products. I certainly don't know all of our products, but have an understanding of what, let's say BD or Bayer as a company does. An understanding of, like, for instance, for Bayer, just maybe know some of the divisions, etc. So like you have it shows that you kind of did some background research. Like, so like, for instance, like definitely for BD, do not call us a pharma company because we are not a pharma company. So like basic, I would say that's some basic things like that. But I would say also in regards to HEOR, again, as I said, it's a learn on the job experience. But I also want to see that you actually understand what HEOR is.
Yes.
And what you're going to be doing on the job. Because part also when I'm interviewing a candidate is assessing whether they seem to have an understanding of what you're going to be doing in your day-to-day role, and also that you would like what you would be doing on the day-to-day role. So being able to show some understanding of that. And this is, I would say, a super plus is also knowing what's going on in the world, like for instance, in the industry. So for instance, for us, ISPOR is like the big professional society. So like, for instance, ISPOR always has like top 10 trends, stuff like that. That's like a great thing to do. I know when I was interviewing for like healthcare consulting, I would like follow all the biotech blogs. So I would know what was going on there. So being able to bring some of those snippets in, I would say are very helpful. I'm also like, for instance, as you guys are all pharmacy students rotating clinically, you have a lot of examples from your different rotations that you can share as well. So like I've been very impressed when students can connect things that they saw in maybe one of their clinical rotations to what something you might see in the fellowship. And that's really why we're so love working with pharmacists, because you're able to bring that clinical knowledge and know-how to us.
Thank you, Mia. I thought of one last question. Promise, this is the last question. Inevitably, there may come a point in the interview process where a question is asked and the student is a little challenged or struggling for a response, okay? And rather than just speak and not answer the question, okay, which is the worst thing, in my opinion, as an interviewer, that you can do. Do you have any tips on how they can handle that kind of dead air, so to speak, and still come across professionally and knowing what they're speaking about? So Steve, I'm sure that's happened to you upon occasion. So I have you answer it and then I'll go to Mia.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does happen. We've all been there ourselves where that happened. What I generally try to do if I was in an interview, what I recommend for my students is to try to get the person you're interviewing with to elaborate on the question. Because that'll also give you a little bit of time to think and to collect yourself and to think on your feet, and just politely and pleasantly say that you're not quite sure that you understand the question, and can you tell me a little bit about what you're asking, where you're going with the question, and what you're looking for from me. And generally by then, you can, like Mia was saying, maybe reach back on some of your experience somewhere. And that is great when you connect some of your other rotations and other work that you've done as pharmacists to a new opportunity and tell us how it relates. But if you're short of having anything to say because you don't have experience, then I think you're going to have to try to show an understanding that you know the role and know the question that is being asked, that you can at least talk to it, show an understanding of it, what you would bring to the table if you had that experience.
Right. Thank you, Steve. Very helpful. Mia, I'll end with you.
Yeah, so I think kind of as Steve was saying, you can also kind of repeat the question back in your own words to show that you understand. I also think it's totally fine to ask for a moment to think too. Say, let me think about that for a second. Yes, it may be a little bit awkward, but if it allows you a second to think, that's totally fine with me as an interviewer. The one thing, never lie, like never make anything up. Like everyone knows, and it's best to, exactly as Steve was saying, to maybe be 100% honest and say, I'm not completely sure. This is what I think. This is my understanding. This is what I believe I can add from my experiences. And I think that earnestness shows a lot. And I'd say also in the business setting, like overconfidence or over that, usually you can see through it. Being able to say, I'm not sure, but this is what I think, or I don't know the answer, I would have to look that up, or something like that, is definitely an acceptable approach. I would say the number one thing is never lie and never make anything up.
Okay, thank you, Mia, for those. I call them the words of wisdom, because, you know, your credibility is really on the line also, and your integrity. And when you go through this process, like you say, if you say something that's false, inevitably it's going to be found out. And then what are you going to do at that point? So, well, on behalf of our students who came to our Zoom session this evening and our school, I just want to thank you sincerely for your time and insight, Stephen and Mia. I hope the students got out of this many little pearls of wisdom in how they can navigate the fellowship interview process. And I know we will be posting this on our RX, not RX Engage, but within our student affairs link for the students to go back and, and have another pass through to see if they missed anything. But again, on behalf of our students and school, we thank you very much, and we'll be seeing you soon. Okay?
Yeah, and I just want to say, if anybody wants to spend 10 to 15 minutes finding out about medical communications, feel free to reach out to me. I would, if you're going to go for that type of fellowship and you want to learn more, say you weren't one of my students and you didn't do a rotation in industry and you'd like to find out more, I'll be glad to give you 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Stephen. And just so you know, students, both Stephen and me are going to be on our new advisory board that we're going to be launching for the school. So you can see we have two consummate professionals in both medical devices and pharma engaging with us on a higher level as well as with our students. So we're very fortunate to have them as partners and affiliates of the school. I'm getting a whole bunch of thank yous from the students. So thank you again, Steve and Mia. And everybody have a great evening. Okay.
Have a great night.
Take care now.